This episode is brought to you by Monogram. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Design Dash podcast. I am your co-host, Melissa, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Laura. And we are here with our guest today, Kathleen Shannon. Hi, Kathleen.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me, Laura and Melissa.
Thank you for being with us. So, Kathleen is a co-founder and creative director at Braid Creative, which is a branding agency. Kathleen blends her design expertise with her roles as a wife, a mom, and a roller skating enthusiast in Detroit. Her work is centered around branding, it's centered around blending who you are with the work that you do. Which is something that we talk a lot about in the interior design world and talk a lot about here at Design Dash, because I kind of like to separate those things. So we may get into that a little bit, a little challenging.
And I don't like to separate it at all.
Perfect. Both ends of the spectrum.
Yes. Yeah. So you co-hosted the Being Boss podcast, offering valuable advice on mindset and productivity for creative entrepreneurs. You're also the author of Being Boss, Take Control of Your Work and Live Life on Your Terms. That's a big part of our ethos at Design Dash. And you have a passion for cooking, travel, roller skating, which we talked about. We also talked about you being an interior design enthusiast earlier. And you don't shy away from ordering the whole brunch menu, which I think that's awesome. Full support. We're thrilled to have you with us today,
living that full tourist lifestyle.
Well, yeah, I'm a Taurus moon. I get it.
Ooh, I want to eat it all. I want to be surrounded by beautiful things. It affects me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I'm an Aquarius sun and a Taurus moon, and then a Cancer rising. So I'm very,
Okay.
I love like just enjoying all of those things, but then by myself.
Yeah. What about you, Laura? Do you know what you don't know your sign or any of it? I don't know what
any of that means. No, I'm an Enneagram 3, so we don't care about any of that.
Okay. I am also an Enneagram 3.
Oh, well, then clearly that doesn't influence it.
I know, but I want to be an Enneagram 7.
God, me too, right? Don't they seem fun?
Yes.
I know. I aspire to be a 7. I never will be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. As a 5, I move into a 7 in my times of stress. So I don't know if it's fun or not.
Well, yeah.
Hedonistic, reckless.
I like that. Well, just like after the astrology and Enneagram, this is a business podcast, kind of, I guess. Is it? Is that what this is now?
It doesn't have to be today. We can make it whatever we want it to be.
Yeah, I think, well, let's start with the branding, like Braid Creative and your approach to branding. And you said the words personal branding, which kind of scares the daylights out of me. Like personal branding makes me feel really vulnerable. So I see it on LinkedIn, people talking about like branding your personality for LinkedIn or whatever. So I'd like to know from you, like, it seems really daunting. So, or just like it exposes like who I am so much. So talk to me about that approach and like what you think personal branding is.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you say that it's really vulnerable. And I have found some people have the opposite reaction where they feel like having a personal brand is building up this facade that is maybe not so authentic, or I'm starting to see a backlash to the word personal branding. And I totally get it, because in a world, I think, especially since influencers have really gained momentum in the zeitgeist, in the stratosphere, it kind of feels like everyone's a commodity, And so that's not what it is in my mind. In my mind, it's really just understanding that who you are as a person, especially someone in a creative field, that you can bring all of that to your work and you can really trust it. You can trust yourself. You can be yourself, and that is an asset to your business. More and more I've been falling into like these weird existential crises that AI is taking over everything, or that, it's the end times. I don't really think so, but like it can get
This
pretty,
Taurus behavior.
it can get, I know, maybe it feels a little dark sometimes, but in a world where humanness, like we are so lucky to be here. We're lucky to be humans alive at this time. And I don't know, let's bring all of our weirdness. Let's bring all of our idiosyncronicities, like let's bring all of it into the work that we do. And obviously you want to be professional. You don't want to be unhinged. And that is not what a personal brand means. Like you might be unhinged, but it really is just thinking about what makes you memorable. What makes what is the first impression whenever people see you or your work? And then what's the kind of reputation that you're building? And so I like to think about a personal brand in terms of if someone meets you within the first 5 minutes, what do they know? What do they want to do? And how do they feel? And then let's say you're working with them, and you're working with them through a project. After that project, what do they know, do, and feel? And then how are they describing that to their friends? And that's really defining your personal brand, is creating a language, creating a platform, creating an atmosphere where people know how to talk about you and talk about your work.
See, to me, that is vulnerable as all get out. But also, I don't think I would go into it putting a mask on and trying to be someone else. So, I would approach it authentically, like we're doing here on the podcast. We may
Absolutely.
drop an F-bomb here or there, and that is just how we speak. And so I'm okay with that, but I do try to rein it in, I guess. Is that authentic? Anyway, I go into the spiral about personal branding. Melissa, what do you think? I don't know. Do you have these same reservations?
I do. I often wonder if just the whole term personal branding is just a capitalist phenomenon. Like you're right, the commoditization of myself as a person. Well, how then can I be authentic? I guess sometimes it just gets misconstrued with, okay, if I care about my personal brand, I'm trying to make money off of who I am. But it doesn't always have to be that way, right? Like you're saying that you just want to bring your whole self into what you're doing all the time, and that's a good way to make connections with other people.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that I can't compartmentalize. If I'm not at work, I'm not thinking about work. Truly.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've gotten to that place after really defining myself as an entrepreneur and really being too attached to my personal brand. For those who aren't watching, I'm putting that in big air quotes. Because you do have to be able to separate in a way. I think it really is just allowing people to know what to expect at a first glance. And so that you can either attract the people that are for you and for the work that you do, or repel the ones that are not a good fit. If anything, a personal brand is just a great way to be more efficient about working with the people that you want to work with and not working with people that you don't want to work with.
I think that's a great perspective. When we're talking to other interior design business owners, I always tell them, be authentic, which now I feel like maybe I'm really overusing that word to a degree. And then people will ask me, okay, well, how and why does it matter? Like how do you then articulate your personal brand through to social media, for example, or through to a client interaction?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of ways to convey it. And it's interesting, thinking about social media and conveying your personal brand, because one of my main issues, and I'm curious if the people that you work with have this as well, where everyone's kind of almost becoming allergic to social media, or there's all this pressure around how you present and how you show up on social media. And I'm starting to see that the algorithm is starting to create this homogenization of personality and style and all of it. So maybe I'd say just don't do social media at all.
Unpopular opinion, don't do social media.
Or don't do the things that you don't want to do. Maybe that's step number one to your personal brand. And that can, for me, that is in the kind of, because I am the creative director at Braid Creative, and I definitely look at all the work that I do through a very strategic, business-minded lens. But at the end of the day, I am a creative person. I'm an artist, and I love thinking about the way things look and feel. And I certainly have a style and an approach, and that's not going to be for everyone. And so whenever I think about everyone who's listening to this show and having a personal brand, it might be as simple as, I'm so tactical. So I'm like, let's get out the piece of paper. Let's draw a chart on it. So what I would do is think about what projects did you feel your most, like you brought your most to it? Like you really brought who you are to it. What was the client like? And if you have multiple projects, even better, you have some data that you can start to pull patterns from. So what are the projects that really light you up? And just start writing it down. And then things from as little as only including that into your portfolio to getting on social media if you're down for it and talking about, here's what I loved about this project, talking about the behind the scenes stuff, the struggles, talking about the moments that felt really special whenever you hit that little magic spot of, yes, I'm doing a good job. I'm creating magic here and something feels really special. Like, when does that happen for you? And so it doesn't have to mean that you're talking about super intimate stuff or super vulnerable things. It really is just almost giving yourself permission to talk about your thought process, to talk about your creative process, to talk about what you like and what you don't like. I think it can really be as simple as that. And then it might be as simple as, okay, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I'm working on a big tattoo on my arm. So this is part of it. I'm showing you all a like huge forearm tattoo. It's a big red peony. That was probably supposed to be a little bit more pink than red, but my skin just soaked up the color. Anyway, I didn't get this until I was after 40 years old. I've wanted tattoos my whole life, and I really have this vision of being this super tatted up granny one day and having this really bold style and like big chunky glasses and cool eccentric earrings. I have this vision for the kind of old lady I want to be. And then I think, okay, well, why not now? And even thinking about how even just 10 years ago, I don't know if you all grew up with this impression that you couldn't have a real job if you had tattoos or facial piercings. And this is like a more, I would say, shallow expression of a personal brand, but even what's considered professional to wear in your personal style, the way that you do your hair, whatever it might be. I think that it really is just giving yourself permission to show up how you want to show up and trusting that people are going to really like you whenever you are showing up as yourself, whenever you're shining. I don't know. I'm starting to feel cheesy talking about this because it makes me think about whenever I was in elementary school, my favorite outfit was this, jet fighter pilot, like zip up onesie that I got at the Army thrift store. You know what I'm talking about? And so I was, like a fifth grader wearing this oversized pilot suit, and kids would make fun of me because of course they were making fun of me. And I remember telling my mom, like, nobody likes my outfit. And she was like, okay, well, but do you like it? And I was like, yes. And she said, well, would you rather wear some Guess jeans and be cool, and uncomfortable?
Oh,
like, yeah. Or do you want to wear what you want to wear? And I was like, okay, you're right. I want to wear what I want to wear. And on that note, I just recently bought another pilot suit like that. And it's dope. It is such a dope outfit. I can, of course, accessorize it better now than whenever I was 11 years old. But anyway, so I think that I don't even know if I answered your question.
I mean, that's a good, first of all, let's applaud your mother for that answer. Like, yes. Do you like it? Like, who gives a shit if they like it?
Right.
Man, but like, I think women, and I'm making a general statement, we're people pleasers a lot of the time, and we want people to like what we're putting out there. So I guess like someone that may be camera shy or may not want, maybe a little reticent to put themselves in front of the camera and like really be herself. Like, what's one small step she can take? What's the first thing? Something easy. Is there easy? I don't know.
Okay. I don't think that everyone who is an entrepreneur or a creative has to be an extrovert by any means. I don't think that you should be putting yourself out on camera if you don't want to. So maybe it is a photo of your project. Maybe it is talking about it, writing about it in a certain way that's a little bit different. Maybe it is creating a slideshow of your process, and kind of working backwards from there. And so I think that that's it. But also, if you want to show up on camera, like if it really is that you're like, okay, I want to show up on camera, but I'm a little bit shy, just do it. Just hop on. It doesn't even have to be a reel. It can be a story that's going to disappear in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And I promise you, no one's going to see it, because right now you have to pay for anyone to see anything on social media.
See it anyway.
So just go for it. Just go for it. You're not going to, I don't think you're going to regret it. Just give yourself the challenge of hitting publish, because everyone sucks at first. Everyone sucks at speaking on camera. Everyone who's starting a podcast hates the sound of their own voice. Everyone who's writing, look at even the work that we were probably all doing 10 years ago. There's probably some moments of like, I would do that better now, And so like, this is the youngest you're ever going to be. This is the moment to just do it. Or
start channeling your tatted up granny now.
But here's what I will say. If you don't want to do it, stop beating yourself up and stop acting like this is the thing that's holding your business back. Because I see it a lot as people want to show up, or they don't want to show up, but then they think, oh, well, my business isn't successful because I'm not creating these personally branded reels on Instagram. No, that is not it. You can find another way. Like the things that you want to do, the things that give you energy, just double down on those, whatever it is, and go for it.
Yeah, I think that when you're approaching things with that sort of scarcity mindset, it's really easy to limit yourself. Yeah. And I think it is somebody who does that. So well, Kathy, I want to ask you about, because we have a lot of people in our audience who are maybe pivoting. So a lot of our listeners are, at the ages that we are, midlife, right? We're also mothers, or we own businesses. And so I feel like there's this momentum towards something. And then for a lot of us, we think, oh, I don't know if this is actually what I want to do. I want to do something completely different. And then you start to think, okay, well, who am I really? Is that something that you ever run into with clients or even with other people who are just like, yes, I want to have a business that reflects who I am, but I'm kind of going through a midlife identity crisis right now. What do I do?
Yeah, I can relate. I think we all can relate. I just know that whenever I'm speaking with someone who's kind of younger in their business and their business vision, the thing that you have to know is that this dream job that you have whenever you think about pivoting is still a job. And every job has its ups and downs. And so you need to be passionate about what it is that you want to do, or accept that this is a job and it doesn't have to be your passion, or this is my hot take. You don't have to work for yourself if you don't want to. If you really don't know that if this is what you want to be doing, really working for yourself is 2 full-time jobs. One is the craft that you do. So if it's interior design, it's being the best interior designer you can be. And if you don't want to be the best interior designer in the world, then you maybe, I'm taking back. Sorry. I'm taking back my thought on this a little bit because, but I'm getting
saying this out loud.
There are two jobs whenever it comes to working for yourself. There's the one, managing the business, and 2, doing the craft. And if you don't know, if this is what I'm trying to say, if you don't know that you're so passionate about the craft that you're willing to do the crappy work of owning your own business and drumming up new business and all the logistics and administration and putting your own money on the line or getting a loan or all the things that come, figuring out private health insurance, figuring out your LLC, all the things, taxes, all of it. It's all really a lot of work. And so you don't have to work for yourself. If you're in this midlife pivot, in fact, more than anything, and especially if you've never owned your own business, go work for someone else. Learn how to do your craft on someone else's dime.
That is
under the mentorship of someone else, because starting out the gate, doing all these new things at the same time just sounds really exhausting, especially midlife, especially if you have kids.
We'd like to thank our good friends at Monogram Appliances. We've partnered with Monogram for over a decade with our design firm, Laura U Design Collective, and we're so happy to partner with them in producing the Design Dash podcast. Monogram sources the highest quality materials for their appliances, from commercial grade stainless steel to unscratchable sapphire glass. Monogram ensures lasting beauty and unmatchable quality for your luxury kitchen. And not only that, but they have an amazing team who we love working with, and we know you will too. So thanks, Monogram.
Sounds like you've been there. Yeah, I mean, I think, and maybe this is, God, my toxic positivity, but I feel like everyone can do it. Like if you want to own your business, you can do it. But I think it is good advice to go work for someone else, see how it's done, and then go out.
Yes.
Like I will say, I've had people that have worked with us, like multiple, that have then gone on to start their own firms. They've worked with me for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, maybe longer. And then they've left. They haven't gone to work for someone else. They saw how we did it and they started their own firm. And I'm like, hell yeah, sister, go do it. Like it's hard. So if you can do it, more power to you. But I'm a big proponent of working for yourself. However, I will say I agree with you. Like if you really want to hone your craft, being a business owner is probably not the way to do it, because you are going to be focused so much on the business. You are not focused on the craft as much until you're hiring that team that can collaborate and grow with you. So yes, that is very true. I hadn't thought about it.
Especially if you're a creative. I just feel like, what is it? The Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, it's just really hard to bring your most creative, authentic self to your work whenever you're freaking out about just the logistics and the money and all the different things.
Yeah. Like my bank account is going to be low and I can't pay my contractor this week. And oh my God, how am I going to be creative for my client? Because this stuff over here sucks and needs my attention. That's so true.
Exactly. And I haven't been there. I've been working for myself since I was 26 or 27. And I just think if I started over now, which is kind of my fantasy. Do you all ever fantasize about like being a barista somewhere? Or
oh my
gosh, that's Laura's fantasy.
That's me. Yes, dude, that's my fallback. I am a barista.
Me too. Mine is either a barista or like a shop girl. I don't know if you've ever seen Steve Martin's movie called Shop Girl.
Yes.
Like that kind of shop girl where like you work in a fancy department store and
I need the fast pace of the barista life.
Yeah. And the barista life. I also always think about being an executive assistant. How good. Like Devil Wears Prada.
Yep.
Like Miranda / I think that she would be the dream boss. I know she's terrible in that movie. I'm always rooting for her in that movie.
Something about you, Kathleen.
I think it's
because
just
you feel like you could own it. You're like, I could impress Miranda so quick, like she wouldn't even know what she did before.
Yes. Anyway,
I would make coffee like such a boss. I would do it anyway, but I'm not doing that. But yes, I think that like.
And to be fair, okay, so I think about whenever I think about pivoting, and if it really was in a new direction, especially something I'm passionate about, like, for example, interior design. If I wanted to become an interior designer, and I could see that as a very credible living for myself, I don't know the first thing about, I know about decorating my house, and I love doing that. I don't think that's enough to be an interior designer or decorator.
Thank God it's not, but
right? I mean, because
like, I know nothing about branding, so I certainly am not going to open my own agency. But I could come work for
Right.
you and learn the craft.
And vice versa,
Yeah.
where you can learn about it. And then, but everyone that works for me, they're not going like, they're like, yes, please, more of this, please. Like,
Yeah.
let's hang out here. And so I think that there is some of that to it. So yeah, if you can find some sort of mentor or someone that can lead you along the way, or let it organically grow. And if you have the freedom and flexibility, especially financially and time-wise, just start really small. Just start with that one client.
Yeah.
That's also my advice, is that you don't have to think about creating an empire or comparing yourself to Kelly Wearstler or, whoever it might be. I think that it really is just looking at, okay, what is the next smallest thing that I can do to create this business? And maybe it is helping a friend, or getting a small portfolio together, or literally getting some magazines and cutting out a vision board of the kind of stuff that you'd like to be doing. Just getting some clarity in that way.
I love it. It's like it all just goes back to do what you want, do what makes you happy. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, don't get into something that you're going to end up not liking or
And sometimes there are going to be days that you don't like it. Sometimes everything sucks. Sometimes huge disasters happen, and being able to kind of commit and persevere through that to the other side, where you can start building on your own expertise. That's another thing that I'm seeing is, if you do too much pivoting in life, it can start to water down what you want to be known for. And so really thinking about what it is that you want to be known for. And that doesn't mean that you can't be a jack of all trades. I think there's something really beautiful about being a Renaissance woman who can really kind of do it all. I would just find the thing that ties it all together. What is that common denominator? And oftentimes it's who you are, which comes back to the personal brand of it all, and really deciding what it is that you want to show up with, how you want to show up, and what you can offer.
I like this. I like that it's like, just take that first small step too. Like, you don't have to build an empire from day one. I think so many people get paralysis because they see this huge, they build a vision board, which I love. I built a vision board, but then I flipped it over and made it a checklist because that's how my brain works.
Yes.
But I think you build this vision board and you're like, oh my God, this is so much. I'm paralyzed. Like, what in the hell do I even do first? So I think, yes, take on that one small project. It could be a family member, a friend, which, be careful, but it can be those things. And then just build it from there incrementally. I think that makes total sense.
What about the fear of feeling like you have to do it alone? I think that's the thing that can be really scary about being an entrepreneur, is like, I'm by myself. Like, I don't have a team yet. Like, I'm alone. And I think that can be kind of daunting to some people, especially, I mean, a lot of the interior designers that we speak to, they're solo, at least at first. Like, you kind of have to be, right? And that can be really scary.
Find yourself a business bestie.
Yeah.
Find someone else who's in it alone. And I do believe in collaboration and partnership. I also think that a lot of people, again, like, just don't make excuses for yourself. Don't make excuses saying, well, if I had someone else, it would be easier, because there's also harder things where you have to compromise. I mean, it's like being married, being in a business partnership. So I would say just own it, and yeah, things are going to be hard, and that doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it wrong if you're lonely. It doesn't make it wrong if you're scared. You just have to keep going, push through it, and you'll start to build that confidence.
So did you have a mentor? So many business owners I talked to didn't have a mentor. Like, I'm one of them. So do you feel like you had a mentor?
That's a good question. My journey is that I started working after college as a graphic designer. Shortly after graduating, I had a small job, and then I started working with my sister, who is 7 years older than me, at an advertising agency. And so I had many mentors in that moment. And then I left about 5 years into it to start my own thing. And so I started off by designing wedding invitations. Y'all, this was like prime 2009, right? Like, We're talking the very beginning of Pinterest, Etsy. Like people weren't selling invitations on Etsy. And so I got to design, it actually came from my own wedding. I had designed my own invitations to look kind of like Wes Anderson-ish. I literally printed them on our laser black and white printer at work, but I was putting the weirdest paper through that printer and just trying to really make it creative and fun. And it gained attention. You know, it ended up being on a very popular blog. And then I had other brides asking me to design their wedding invitations. And so it happened very organically where I was like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and try this. A year after doing that, my sister, who is kind of my mentor and my big sister, she was my creative director, decided to quit that advertising agency. And that's where we started Braid Creative ourselves. And through that process, I will say, we really didn't have a business mentor, but we did have cheerleaders along the way. And we were just figuring it out as we went and piecing it together. I would say more than mentors, I had a lot of peers that I really relied on because we were figuring it out together. And the beauty of that is that now, 12 years later, 13 years later, I remember one of my peers, Brandy Bernoski, she does websites through an agency called Alchemy and Aim. We're, you know, on the phone with each other or, you know, sending clients to each other. And I'm like, can you believe that 13 years ago, we were at that small little blogging conference and no one knew what they were doing. And we've all kind of built each other up along the way. And there's something really special to that. And there's something to figuring it out on your own and figuring it out in a new way that hasn't been done. You know, sometimes mentors can be dangerous because they're going to tell you this is how it's done. And guess what? You can do it your way. So I would say take everything with a grain of salt, you know, and kind of trust your gut.
It's like that peer network. And so you mentioned conferences. So did you go, like, is that how you got started? Did you feel like you like just needed to immerse yourself in the industry, or was that just like a one-off?
Yeah, good question. So there's been some big overlaps in my life. And this is why I'm probably passionate about personal branding, because I was always in college and then right out of college, I was obsessed with wanting to be the best graphic designer. I had a true passion for graphic design. I was buying, you know, like the How Design print magazines that you would, I'd go to Barnes and Noble, and they were so expensive. They were like $14. It was so much money. And I would go and buy them and look through them and look at the artist names and then try and find the artists online or to see if they had any books. And again, this is pre-Pinterest. It wasn't like I could just go and pin a bunch of things. There weren't sites like Dribbble. There weren't a lot of graphic designer hubs that there are now. Same for interior design, I'm sure.
Oh, no, I spent a ton of time at Barnes and Noble. Yes.
Yes. So, you know,
this is pre-Instagram, pre-Pinterest.
All of it.
Yes. Yeah. It's all hard copy.
And there's something I think really romantic about that. I think there's something really special about that time of really just diving into that obsession. And that's why I always feel like craft first, business second, because if you are passionate about your craft, the business will follow. Sometimes you just can't help it.
Right.
Wait, but what? Oh, the blogging, the conferences. Okay. I was like, what was the original question? So whenever I started working for myself, doing these invitations, my goal was I always just wanted to make as much money as my age. So if I was 28 years old, I wanted to make $28,000 a year. Again, this was like 2009 and I was living in Oklahoma City. So that was big money for me. And I still think that, you know, even now some people are like, okay, like set a small goal for yourself. If I can just make this much money and reverse engineer it, how much would each project have to cost? I mean, it's just a simple math analysis, right?
Yeah.
And so, I started sharing a little bit on my blog about how I was now working for myself. And I started getting emails and people were asking me, how are you managing your workflow? I already knew a lot because I had come from an agency. So I was already bringing a very strategic and process oriented style of working to my freelancing career. I was very organized. I knew how to bill people. I knew how to track my time. I knew how to keep track of my jobs and project flows because I've been trained under someone else's dime.
Agency experience. Melissa
Agency
talks about this all the time.
Agency experience, like especially if you're in a marketing field, agency experience is a must, in my opinion. You learn so much.
It's a master's degree in doing it, right? So I started, instead of just responding to these emails one by one, I started putting that content out there. I started sharing how I'm doing everything. I was sharing with people my workflow. I was sharing with them how I deal with tricky clients. And then with that, I was accidentally positioned myself as being an expert at entrepreneurship, even though I didn't know anything. I was just saying, here's how I'm doing it. And with that, that's how the podcast ended up coming to be, Being Boss. Because then I started a podcast talking about running a business. And then that ended up in a book deal, and that ended up in eventually selling the podcast business to my co-host because I found that I was tired of talking about business and I was ready to go back to my craft. I missed the thing that I was the most passionate about, which was the art direction and the graphic design of it. And I really had to get real with myself because Being Boss was doing great. And this is in the height of the girl boss era. It was all really taking off. And it was something that was more mainstream and something I was really known for. And that it was a pivotal moment where it kind of felt like a marriage, where I'm like, okay. And I was kind of in a polyamorous marriage, right? Because I had Being Boss and I had Braid Creative. And I had Being Boss with my business bestie, Emily Thompson, who's still one of my nearest and dearest. And then I had Braid Creative with my sister, Tara. And I also work with my best friend, Liz. She's one of my creatives at Braid Creative. And I really had to decide, okay, which one? I can only choose one. There's only so much. And at this time, I'm also having a baby. I've got a family.
It's
I live
lot.
a very big life. And so I had to make some hard decisions. And I decided on Braid because it felt like the real thing to me as far as getting to do what it is that I love. Now, do I sometimes fantasize about being a barista today? Yeah. And have I had really hard moments? I own my business with my sister where I've thought, you know what, if we didn't have this business together, we could just be sisters. And what would that be like? And I mean, we're talking tears, and so I've had to come at a couple of crossroads and I had to think about myself being this old tatted up grandma and sitting on a porch with my sister in our rocking chairs and just thinking, are we proud of how we did it? And I think that we would be really proud sticking it out and doing it together. I imagine our grandbabies being like, did you know that grandma owned a marketing agency with, our great Aunt Tara? I just
have you seen those glasses? Are you surprised?
Yeah, I know, right? They won't be surprised. So anyway, having to just stick to it. And so I guess if I could leave anyone with anything today, it is that kind of be committed and just stick to it. And you can evolve it along the way. You can make tweaks, you can make twists and turns to really create what it is that you want to be creating. You can adjust accordingly whenever things suck. But if you can just stick to it and commit to your vision, it will pay off. It really, really will.
I think that is great advice. And I think that's a good place to leave it. I have so many more questions though.
That's
I know. I'm like, I could just keep going, but that is so good. So I think we should leave it there and just done. You heard it from her. You heard it from Kathleen. Excellent. Thank you so much. This was really great. I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And I'm sending your audience the most love. I know it's so scary. I just want to reach out through people's ear pods or through the screen and just give everyone a big hug because yes, it's scary. And yes, it's okay. And yes, sometimes it sucks. And yes, it's so nuanced. And sorry, I still have so much more to say. Going back to the social media of it all, we see this kind of one-dimensional a view of what business ownership looks like. And this is why podcasts like yours are so important, because people are really talking about it and sharing the ups and downs of it and the behind the scenes of it. And it's nuanced and it can be complicated, but just do it. Find some friends, stay positive.
That's good.
And there we go. Okay, now we can be done for real.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is do it scared. Yes, it's scary. Ooh. Do it anyway. Like, I love that. Stay positive. Like, you're a 3. I think and I'm a 3. That's kind of easy because that's our personality, is to be that optimistic person. But even if you're not, call me. I'll give you a pep talk. Call Kathleen. She's going to give you a pep talk. Call Melissa. She's going to give you the real deal.
I'm pretty critical.
I mean, and sometimes like my advice comes down to like, listen, we're all going to die. Like if you've ever listened to my podcast, I'm like, we're all dead in a few, before you know it. So like, just have fun, do what you want, be a good person. You got this.
Totally.
Trust yourself.
Well, I think that's one hell of a pep talk. Thank you so much for joining us on Design Dash Podcast.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast, coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on designdash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.